Hey, good morning, guys. I am glad to be with you this morning. I just thought I recorded my entire 16 and a half minute talk with you, and the microphone was off, so I'll get to do it again. So hopefully it is just as informative. Just a quick note, Michaela and I and our group here that meets at our house, the disciples here, have been absolutely in prayer regarding the war in Ukraine, the efforts of you guys as a group and extending your hand to those who need help, the refugees coming in, prayers for Dima Marina's family, and other situations. So we've absolutely been game on for that, and we continue to do so. We look forward, Michaela and I look forward to coming this summer, and it looks like it'll be the end of June. We'll give you more details as we go. All right, let's jump into this for the second time, this time with actual voice over. So I'm going to go ahead and read in Luke 15 the passage that we're looking at. So we have been really looking at Luke 15, breaking it up into these three different stories. We've looked at the Good Shepherd, looking at the good woman who found the lost coin, and then finally the patriarch as this awesome father who deals with the prodigal, and now also with the older son. And so that's where we have left off, and I want to kind of give the catalyst for the reason that Jesus jumped into these stories. Was he was having dinner with others around him, as he usually did, and got some criticism from the Pharisees where they said, hey, look who he's dining with. He's eating with these tax collectors and sinners. And so all of these stories relate to celebrating the change of heart of all these situations, but mostly celebrating the costly love that the shepherd shows, that the woman shows, that the patriarch shows. And so we'll get more into that. Let's go ahead and begin with the older son. So we've finished the prodigal, and we're going to look at the older son, the other brother. It says, meanwhile, the older son, verse 25, was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in, so his father went out and he pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found. And so, we look into this. Prodigals come back. Party is in full swing. And we know it's in full swing because we see that the older brother, he can hear the singing, but he also can hear the dancing. So when you can hear dancing, you know that it's a kind of a rowdy party. In verse 27, we look and it says that God, it says he has him back. And it's important to look at that. When you look at verse 27, this servant boy or this young child was expressing to the older son what was going on. He says, your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. And that can be read to he has gotten him back. So it's an active initiative by the father. And if you remember, we noticed that, the turning point of the prodigal back in the other story wasn't so much the point where he came to his senses while he was in the foreign country, but it was now at the edge of the field as the father comes running towards him, really in a way that kind of was humiliating, and extended the robe, the ring, the sandals, all these efforts to show that he's accepted. And it changes the speech of that prodigal, if you remember. He changes it around. And that has him back was active, and I think it that's what was noticed by the community. Verse 27 also reminds the original complaint by the Pharisees that initiated these three stories. He's eating, and he's eating with, you need to eat with, you need to celebrate with these folks. I also want to mention too, notice who the banquet is honoring. The honor really goes to the father, to this patriarch. He's the one who has gotten back this son safe and sound. It's the whole combination of things, yes, to see that the son is now in relationship, but in reality, the celebration is for this incredible moment of the father bringing him back. And then verse 28, we see that the son, the older son, got angry. And you got to ask, well, what prompted that anger? And I think when you really look at it, it wasn't just that the way he was being treated, but I think the bottom line issue is that he saw that reconciliation was already in play between his dad and his brother. And in some ways thought maybe, he's getting off too easy. I mean, I felt that. I was in a relationship with a friend that we hit a challenging time, and I was sinned against in a pretty significant way. And I remember having to deal with that and going, I just want to get him to say he's sorry. I just want him to cry a little bit, or to, maybe get on his knees and apologize. And those things weren't happening. And it wasn't until I got to a place of really saying that he's in his journey, it's okay, and forgiving him, that I was in a good place. Later he came back, when I wasn't even expecting it, and had remorse and all these things, which was fine. I didn't really expect it. But I think sometimes we get in that space where we want people to really feel it, and I think the brother probably was in the same place. So it says, well, what was his response? He refused to go into the party. And much like the Pharisees, they refused to go in. And you got to realize that this was not done in private. Remember that the communities were very small. Probably within 6 acres was the entire community, the entire village. And so very compact. They knew what was happening. They could hear music. They could hear dancing. And any action was not done in private. So word would have spread that the brother was refusing to come in. And the listener would have expected, what's going to happen? There's going to be some bad mojo coming on this guy because he's decided to insult the patriarch. But it doesn't go that way. That's not how it transpired. It says that the father left the party in sight of all these people, went out, and he pleaded with him. And the word in the Greek means he begged him. I mean, he was begging him. And I think you got to realize this really was a clear demonstration of incredible costly love that was going on. But it doesn't move this guy. Where it moved the prodigal, you notice in verse 29, you see the lack of respect in the way he converses with the father. He doesn't even address him. He just says, look, all these years, there's no title. And that insult would have been, really picked up on by those listeners. He uses this heightened imagery or hyperbole, we call it, which he says, I've been slaving all these years. The prodigal, you go back to the prodigal, he never considered that to be an option in his relationship with the father, because he says, no, I want to come back as a craftsman. And he knew that the father, the patriarch, would never have accepted him back as a slave. I think at least he knew that. And really, was the older brother ever treated as a slave? And I say, no, because no master passes out his inheritance to a slave. No master would humiliate himself in public for a slave, and also no slave would ever challenge a master in public. So those things are kind of off the table. He says, hey, I've never disobeyed your orders. All right, so this relationship is all order-based. If my relationship with my wife, Michaela, was all about obeying orders, that would have been a very thin relationship. That's more like the military or a work environment. And so I think the way that the son viewed the relationship was about do's and don'ts. And that's challenging for us. Is that how we view, kind of the way we view our relationship with the Father? Is I feel good when I'm doing a lot of do's and I'm not doing the don'ts, or is that right? Yeah, something like that. I don't want to think too deeply about that right now. But it's all about orders for him. And I think this could have been really a reference as Jesus is speaking to the 99, he says, who need no repentance. He goes on, the older brother says, give me a young goat. You never gave me a young goat so I could go out and celebrate with my friends. And, who were his friends? Not his family, not the village, not the people in close proximity. And so you have to ask, where are they? Who are these people? And then he addresses his brother in a way that, he doesn't even address his brother. He says, this son of yours, but when this son of yours, what? Not my brother? It doesn't name him. I mean, this older son, he's not in relationship with the patriarch, with the dad. And he's also not in a relationship with the brother. He's got issues. He goes off and he creates this image of the son, which I believe is damaging and incorrect. And he says, this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes. That's pure conjecture. He hadn't had a conversation with him at all to even get the details of what had happened in this foreign country. Verse 13, we learned that the word asotos, which is Greek, it means kind of wild living. It doesn't infer prostitution or anything like that. And you got to realize, by him casting aspersions on the brother, these incorrect views, he's really limiting himself and creating a place where the brother probably wouldn't be able to marry anyone within that village because of this reputation that's been given. All right, so all this is in play. This conversation, it's heated, and I know how I would have responded if I was the dad. Probably not the way he did, obviously, but he comes back in a very gentle way. He uses this word called teknon, Teknon, which means, we see it within the version NIV that I read, it says my son, but in reality it means my little boy, my little boy. It's so loving of a term and so accepting, and so it just engages a heart there. But the father gently reminds the older son that he has provided for all his needs his entire life. And it's incredible, and so it gets back to this whole place. Jesus, I believe, purposefully has done this before, but purposely left out the ending of the story. So as a listener in the audience, you would want to know, well, how did the older son respond? And there's no mention of it. And you can sort of tell that this is, in essence, really directed at the Pharisees. And so it goes back and it attempts to answer that question. And, the question is, who are the 99? And we can find ourselves in both of these places, but specifically, this has a lot of, I think this was very challenging for those who were listening and who Jesus was really directing this towards. There are a lot of parallels. And remember that a lot of the study that I've been doing has been done through 3 or 4 different books that I've read from Dr. Ken Bailey, who was over in Israel for 50 years, knows the history, knows the ins and outs, and some other authors too, some other commentaries. But he makes a comparison between the prodigal and the older son. He says each expected a payment for services rendered. Each was, what's interesting too is that each was at the edge of a field. So the father, when he came out to see the prodigal, there was an interaction at the edge of the field. And in the same way with the older son, he's at the edge of the field. He's been in the field. And so you've got this field imagery, and you've got this question, what are you going to do at the edge of the field? One is transformed by the father at the edge of the field, and the other one puts up a battle and doesn't get transformed. So this edge of field imagery. Both make a movement to return. One is a servant, a craftsman for that the prodigal was going to be about, and the older son, mentioned slave. But each expected services rendered. The prodigal wanted to become a craftsman, and the other one wanted to receive a goat. So each insults the father, and thus broke relationship with him and also the community. Both boys at some point really tried to manipulate the father in order to serve their own interest. Each wants monetary value for the estate for his own pleasure. Each searches out and finds the primary community that's beyond just the father and the family around him. And for both, the father makes a public demonstration of really unexpected love. And and both are welcome at the banquet. That's the thing. Both are involved and welcome at the banquet. So, what is this all about? When you take these three stories, they all talk about reframing, in my mind, what repentance is. Repentance does have actions attached to it, but it so much involves, our change of mind towards who the Father is. And actions will come, but I think in my past, I've always looked, I got to have these actions, bang, all these different things, and not so much at the incredible work that the Father has done. And then you get this issue of how a Jew looked at repentance. They looked at it as meeting certain requirements and specifics, and if these didn't get met, they weren't in the mode of dining with them or accepting them in restoration, because that's what a meal does. A meal says, I'm good with you. And Jesus was all about that without them going through all these minutiae of steps. And there's so many other stories that could come out of this, but I think those are incredible driving forces. And so as we walk away from the story, it has a lot of depth. This is one that I will probably share as I share my faith. It'll be one of the primary stories that I share about the Father. So hopefully this has helped you, and please go back and look at the other videos. And I love you all. Look forward to being there in 3 dimensions at some point with Michaela, and we'll talk later. Bye.